We'll go ahead and bring the City Council meeting to order. I would like to first ask everyone to please stand and join in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Phyllis, can you please do roll call?
Craig Koshaw absent. Matt Dyer.
Here.
Tyler Fulenkamp.
Here.
Scott Murray.
Here.
Whitey Sir.
Here. Okay. Were you all given a chance to read the minutes from the previous meeting on March 15th?
Make a motion to accept them as emailed.
I'll second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. First of all, we have a group here for Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. Do one of you want to speak?
I'm just going to hand out some people. Is it okay just to stand here?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'm Cindy Teague, and we have organized Day since several years now. We are concerned about children, and we want to help prevent any kind of abuse to our children in the community and anywhere. So we have pinwheels that we hand out, and some people have called us the pinwheel ladies. And it's to help celebrate the life of children and the happiness of children. And so that's what we hope to do. COVID has created some problems in having our carnival like we've had in the past, so we're thinking of some different things to do. And hopefully everything straightens out a little bit better. But we do, we have Terry Hall come in, we've had him different times to talk about body safety and try to do some things to help prevent abuse of children. We have some different organizations who help us and support us. So we just appreciate the police and the health department and child services and everybody who helps and whatever you do too. So.
Yep. Well, thank you for bringing this to everyone's attention. And I have a proclamation that I'll read. So, yep, you can hand those out. Whereas child abuse and neglect is a community condition and problem, and finding solutions depends on involvement among people in the community. Whereas the effects of child abuse and neglect are felt by whole communities and need to be addressed by the entire community. Whereas Prevent Child Abuse Indiana and SAFE in Adams County are sponsoring several events throughout the month to heighten public awareness of prevention in communities around the state. These events will provide information and materials that support families to prevent child maltreatment and celebrate people who work with and support children and families. And whereas a statewide Pinwheels for Prevention campaign has been launched through the media, public schools, libraries, social service agencies, and businesses during the month of April to celebrate and bring awareness of the great potential of all children in Indiana and the need to strengthen all families with support and nurturing. And whereas the Pinwheels for Prevention campaign includes the planting of pinwheel gardens, statewide celebrating community partnerships for strengthening the family and protecting all children from abuse and neglect. Whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, religious and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Whereas all citizens should become more aware of the power of prevention within the community and become involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe, nurturing environment. Now therefore, I, Daniel L. Rickard, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month in Decatur, and call upon all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to prevent child abuse and thereby strengthening the communities in which we live. Signed this 5th day of April, 2022. Daniel L. Rickard, Mayor, City of Decatur.
Can I add something more?
Sure can.
Tomorrow we are supposed to meet in the courthouse lawn, but it's not raining, and we'll make a pinwheel garden out in the front of the courthouse, and have a speaker, the principal, South Adams, is going to speak with that, and just to celebrate children and make people aware that we care. And then trains will be in the
Okay, well, thank you guys for your efforts. Okay, next we have a request for funds to repair a boiler at the Riverside Center.
Jeremy did get a quote on the, where you at, Jeremy? Did you get a second quote on that yet? Okay.
Oh, she gave me that
We're
back.
having some boiler issues against Riverside Center, and we've had 2 or 3 different technicians look at it. There's still some options. Long term, it's going to need to be replaced. Right now, we're setting up okay until we get fall, or late fall, early winter. So let's just kind of set on this unless you want to appropriate the money now until we figure out, get the second vote, and figure out what we're doing for sure.
Right now, there's not any extra in the park and rec fund, but there is some extra money left over from the elevator after we had that repaired on the CCD fund. I thought would be an option if you guys are okay. Okay,
The boiler
from
started
there.
leaking about 2 weeks ago, and it's repairable, but it's not a long-term fix
What quote do you have now, just to get fixed,
to replace it.
to replace it? And you're working on another one?
Correct.
We can wait till next meeting?
We can wait. The building's doing fine now since the warmer weather. We have a little bit of time to try and get this thing work. Figure out what we're doing for sure.
Okay.
Just more than anything, just to make you aware that we do have an issue out there.
All right. Okay, thanks. Okay. Kurt, do you want to discuss the quotes for 138 North 2nd Street?
Okay, so last time we discussed this, we decided that we were possibly going to try and save this building. So I'm going to back up. I've got the quotes from 2 different contractors, 2 different architects. So I'm going to back up a moment, and we're going to talk about what it would take if we wanted to demolish this building. If you look at this wall section detail here, my cursor's at. This is actually what would be considered the interior wall. This building, or this wall, currently belongs to 138 North 2nd Street. It does not belong to Vinnie's Bar. Vinnie's Bar was built up against this wall. If we wanted to demolish 138 North 2nd Street, first off, this isn't an exterior wall, it's an interior wall. There's a difference there. We would virtually, if we wanted to try and save that wall, would need to go in to Vinnie's in the basement, in the first floor, second floor, and roof system, an anchor into this wall. That means we would have to vacate the tenant on the second floor and find other means or another place for this person to go to live until construction was complete. We'd also have to, according to both architects, try and stabilize the structure of Denny's as well. We have no idea what that cost would be at this point. To demolish the building, just demolish the building and remove it, price tag starts at $84,000. Even the contractor who we have that would actually do the demolition can't guarantee any type of damages that he might do to things. We may have to go in and rebuild a whole end on Denny's, plus whatever stress, cracks, damages we would do then. So the price tag starts at $84,000 for demolition and builds on top. If we had to do a whole new brick wall, we'd probably be looking possibly another $80,000 on top of that in comparison with what we've done on First Street and what we've done here on Second Street. Pranger Group, and these details here are from Pranger Group.
Fixing anything?
I brought them up because both construction crews and both architects, they're in the same ballpark as what they want to do. One wants to do a little more than the other. 5C Construction, who'll be working with Pranger Group. Basically, they want to come in and they want to remove all the interior walls along the exterior of the building, pour new footer walls in the basement and the alley, along the alleyway and on 2nd Street, remove all the glass on the front, install new 4x4 metal posts, reinstall the front facade I-beam, frame new walls on the alley exterior wall, and then they want to access from both the basement, first floor, second floor, and a roof system on Denny's. And basically what they want to do is they want to run, it's called a DTT2Z bracket on all levels on both sides of the interior wall, drill a 1-inch hole, run a threaded rod, and basically brace 138 North 2nd Street building to Denny's. Then they want to go on the other side of 138, on the alley side, and they want to do the same bracket on every floor joist, every truss, and run another threaded rod through that brick wall and attach it to a metal plate. Now that's not going to move that brick wall in. It's just going to hold it exactly where it's at. It's going to keep it from falling out any further than what it does. And then they would go in and skim coat that alley wall and fix the front facade and skim coat that brick as well, make it look decent and weatherproof it. On top of that, then they would also replace the roof system on both the 2-story section and the ranch section with a 25-year roof. And then once again, they would replace, or they would do the skim coat on the brick. That price tag comes in at $160,000. The other contractor, which is Limberlost Construction, and they have their own architect, basically they're wanting to do pretty much the same thing with the exception they don't think they need to do anything with the interior wall between the two buildings. They want to do the same thing. They want to come in and they do want to attach, they want to come in and pour new footings in the basement, build new exterior walls to support everything, and take the weight off of this exterior wall, the brick wall on the alley. They want to set the new posts in the front, reset the beam for the front facade, just like Pranger Group does. But then they want to come in and remove a pretty good section of this alley wall so far back and rebuild it.
Make it straight?
Make it straighter than what it is. They'll never make it completely straight, but they're going to take it back far enough that it's not going to be very noticeable.
I'm not sure you can go exactly straight, right? If we plumbed it and it's outside the corner.
Yeah, you can't, the way it sits now, if you put a plumb bob at the corner, on the second floor, that brick wall's sticking out about 5 inches.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to the first floor down to the alley, the plumb bob is sticking into the alley about 5 inches the other way. So it's a mess right now.
Right.
And it's getting worse every day. So also, they would also go in and completely redo the roof system on both first and two-story and the first floor. Their price tag comes in at $188,790.
Do we have to take the low bid?
There's nothing that says we have to take a low bid. This is an emergency situation. I think by law I could have made the decision a long time ago, but I didn't want to do that. Dan didn't want to do that. We wanted council involved.
And in scenario one, tearing it down, there's many unknowns with Vinnie's building, and I still come back to it looks like we're missing a tooth if that building's gone.
Correct.
So then with the two bids, I personally like Limberlost Construction because of their experience and our working with them. They've worked on our depot, they've worked on many other historic buildings, and for the difference, I think it's worth paying for that experience. My thoughts. I don't know others. What kind of...
Have all of you been in the building?
Yes.
I've been on the outside of it, I've not been in it.
Yes.
I think it would be a good idea for each one of us, I mean, I've been in there, but to at least take a lap through it and see what we're dealing with. I just think it'd be beneficial for you to see the inside of the building.
Wear old clothes.
Yeah.
Is this a new bid from Limberlost Construction?
Yeah, this is a new bid.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
previously there were some add-ons. This includes everything.
Yes, this includes everything. Now, keep in mind, something else we need to look at is my unsafe building fund. I have $145,290. So I'm not going to hit either one with my unsafe building fund. So either way, it doesn't matter. We demolish. Doesn't matter if we go with 5C construction or we go with Limberlost, we're going to need additional funds. Now, in my opinion, the one-story section off the back could wait. I mean, that would be a savings for this year and could be addressed in the next budget year. But the two-story sections definitely need something done, and it needs something done ASAP.
But if we wait, there's chances are it'll be more expensive, the back end.
And if we wait too much longer, it's going to start getting more, especially with the economy. You don't know what building materials are going to do. You guys have seen over the last 2 years how it's been up and down, up and down, up and down.
Kurt, are the quotes broken out in a fashion that you can break out the first floor segment? I mean, I haven't seen what they look like. No.
According to what they have here, I could try. Actually, what I would probably do is go back to each contractor and say, all right, guys, you have your calculators and your erasers and take off the first floor section and see what you come up with.
You also said something about reframing interior walls. That doesn't necessarily have to be done at the moment to...
Well, the interior walls, they're actually interior walls up against the exterior wall. Both architects want to put new interior walls against the brick wall. They want to tear out what's there and put new in the hopes of taking the load off of the floor joists and the roof system so that they're not relying on that brick wall, because that's exactly what they're doing now. The floor joists are sitting in pockets in that brick wall. So that brick wall is holding us up.
So the interior walls are to hold the floor structure.
Correct. It's not any interior wall in the middle of the building. It's the walls of the exterior. They're padded walls that now they want to turn into load-bearing walls, and that would include pouring a footer in the basement.
So the new footer will be inside of the old footer.
Correct,
all the way up.
correct.
You told us previously, we hope it makes it through this past winter.
It won't see another winter.
We need to move.
Yeah, I'm with Matt. I say we fix
it with Limberlost.
And with the rains we're getting, I can't guarantee that.
What do you say?
How long are they going to guarantee this fix? Or what's the, I mean, are they going to put their name on this building?
Yes. The first thing they want to do is come in and get it structurally sound. Second thing they want to do is put a new roof system on it to keep the water out of it. Which, actually, I'm really surprised at as much water that gets into that second floor. That basement is bone dry.
Yeah.
There's a couple soft spots on the first floor where water is sat, but that basement is bone dry. Before long, it's not gonna have that.
The other thing is we do have a somewhat interested party in it. They're looking at grant funding to see what's available. So I know they've had an architectural firm look at the inside and see what it would cost to redo the whole inside of both floors. But right now they're in the middle of searching for grant funding out there to help with it. There's some different grants out there, some for external, some for interior, and some has to be the city applying, some has to be a non-for-profit applying or another entity. So hopefully we'll hear more about that in the next month or so.
I say that we need to fix it, though, right? Now. We need to take care of this now, right?
Yeah, we need to take care of this before winter.
I also agree Limberlost would be my preference as well.
So I'll make a motion. Let's move forward with Limberlost construction.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'll go back to Limberlost and see if I can get new pricing minus the one-story section. Like I said, that's not nearly as bad. I mean, it's bad, but it's not nearly as bad as the two-story section.
Right.
That was an add-on to that building.
That was an add-on to that building anyway. We can.
And I don't think that back end's taking in water, is it?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
But it will eventually.
Okay.
I'll do something within the next.
Yeah, it was dry when I was in there.
Yeah, it was dry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Can you make sure that, is Limberlost going to carry the liability insurance on that building when they take that brick out and rebuild it? Who's
No, they
going
have to. They have to have liability insurance. There's not a contractor that can work in the city of Decatur.
Well, do they need to be bonded for the amount of damage that
That's all part of our purchasing order.
Yeah, it's all part of our purchasing order.
for over this amount, there will have to be a bond that goes with that? Or is that only on
Let
bid?
me grasp the thought, or our requirement.
Even for service contracts, I believe
Yeah.
because it's over a $50,000 amount, I believe their liability coverage has to be $1 million per incident, and it's a $2 million amount.
As long as that's in there.
They have to provide a performance bond. And then the certificate of insurance is $500 per incident or aggregate.
For under 50,000, but I think for over 50,
It's $2 million.
it's higher.
It's $2 million for over.
It's $1 million per incident, and it's $2 million total cost.
Anything over 50.
So is your motion is to move forward with it pending his discussion with them on the first floor, or you want to do the whole thing?
I interpreted that it was to move forward with what he presented. That's what I seconded.
So your questioning, Tyler, is,
So if you're
word that again.
Yeah, so you making a motion to go ahead with the whole $188,000 for the whole project. Kurt was going to go back and check about not doing the first floor because at the moment we don't have $188,000 to do the whole.
Not the first floor, it's the single
So the
floor
back
in the back.
section.
The
Sorry,
back
Matt.
section, the
Right,
ones-
without the back section for
Your
now.
motion was without the back section?
Or were you, okay, let's clarify the motion.
Sorry.
What was your intention with your motion? What was your
To
motion?
start, to move forward
With Limberlost
with
Construction?
Limberlost Construction,
As quoted,
if we can find the additional. We're not, I give Tyler, say we don't have 188,000, so
Yeah,
is
if
there
we
something
don't
we
have-
cannot do now and get it in within the current funding that we
We
have?
need to come up with another 45,000.
Well, I think we need to investigate that. I'm concerned if we start piecemealing it, then the cost is going to continue to...
I guess the only way I'm looking at it, Wiley, is we can fix this front part of the building, make it safe. And if someone wants to buy it and do what they want with the back building, then that's the cost they can spend, that the city doesn't have to incur that cost, because that part of the building is not unsafe. I just feel, I don't want to spend taxpayer money fixing something that's not a danger to the public at the moment. It might not look pretty, but it's not a danger to the public. I'd rather just fix what the danger to the public is at the moment, because that's what got put on our plate.
I would amend my motion to that, fix the part that is the danger, and leave this part out until we know what could be going
I can do that. I
in
can
the
go
sale.
back, I can go back to Limberlost.
And they'll be fine with that, I would think.
So a motion
It's a
to
motion.
amend that bit to,
an amended
I'll
motion.
second.
so a motion is second. Any more discussion?
Yeah, so am I going back to Limberlost or am I going back to both?
Limberlost.
The motion is to move forward with Limberlost.
Alright?
Yeah. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay, thanks, Kurt.
Thanks for all your work on
Yeah,
this.
thanks.
I'm ready for it to be over.
It's not,
I know.
When can they start?
Worst part's coming. No, they're gonna fix it. They're gonna
Oh, you ladies from Safe, I didn't say earlier, we have about 5 more agenda items. It's up to you guys. You can hang out with us all night if you want, but I let you go first, so if you didn't want to stick around all night, you don't have to. That's up to you guys.
May I leave these if anybody wants
You may.
information?
Sure.
Where would you get this, please?
Maybe on the table back to the...
Maybe out in the lobby where people could access them.
Okay.
Yeah, on that counter, the windows over there, at the utility.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Yep.
Okay. Lenny, you want to talk about the UTV ordinance?
Time for this yet?
I don't know, I sent you guys, I guess, the last rough draft copy, and we had a department head meeting today, and council brought up some things about it, but I was just checking to see if you guys were happy with that. I think I'm happy with it, and I just want to get your opinion on it, and then I think council had some issue to bring up about cost of fines, so.
So, we've discussed this ordinance on several occasions, and it is nearing final form or ready to be presented. And the only section that I would ask for input or additional input or discussion would be related to the penalties portion that surround ordinance violations. Most of the provisions within this ordinance correspond with either motor vehicle laws or DNR related laws, but we do have a few areas which are a little bit more restrictive than what our laws state. Generally, a person has to have a valid operator's license within the state of Indiana. Ours requires a person to be 18 and have a valid operator's license. So somebody who is driving at 16 or 17 would be in violation of our ordinance, even though they're not in violation of state law and able to be cited. The current structure of the fine states that it could range from $1 to $100. So I'm asking is it okay to leave it as a range? Should it be better defined? Do you want it to be a flat $50 per ordinance violation with maybe, or, you know, any kind of subsequent violation set at $100?
How would you decide a range?
That's a very good question, Mr. Murray.
Saying you'd rather see it
I would rather see it as a set fee, unless you look through the different requirements and find that maybe one
Is there
carries
something in there
greater-
with fee them twice and then revoke the license?
That's what I was
The
going to ask.
ability to,
Because I know
if there's a problem, we're done with them.
some of the ordinances we looked at were kind of like 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
I like that.
Is there something in here that, or could they just keep paying $50 every time?
You could make penalties more severe, so the consequences become greater with subsequent violations, which would be kind of the idea with maybe a $50 initial fine, and then on a second violation of any kind of the ordinance, it might jump to $100, some kind of suspension. You're getting into more, a lot more oversight and regulation with that kind of practice, but it's certainly done in other communities and certainly would be available to us.
Lenny, you're policing this. What is your thoughts?
Well, I talked to their chiefs, and they got a pretty standard SOP, or ordinance, with a structure of fines and possible suspension. And none of those chiefs have told me they've gone to that far extent, because the people want to drive those things, so they're going to abide by our ordinance and also the motor vehicle laws. So no one has ever been suspended, but the possibility is there if there was any continuous violations. So I'm good with a little bit of teeth like that. I don't anticipate any problems. You know, like I said before, you know, we have over 300 golf carts registered from last year. We don't have any problems with our golf carts, and I don't foresee any problems with it, except the UTV has a little bit different laws by DNR, and we have to follow, and the passenger age, helmets, golf carts you don't have to. But I would like to see a structure of a penalty, and then a little bit more severe one, and then the ultimate, you know, 3 strikes, you're out.
Are you giving permits for these like a golf cart?
What's that?
Are you permitting these like a
No.
golf cart?
No.
They're registered with the
They're
state.
registered for
with
the
Yeah,
the
they're
state.
registered.
So
I wish I
they're
could, because I can get some of that money like the golf cart, but I can't double dip them, so.
so then there's no way to revoke the privilege then, right?
Except with our ordinance, if they're done something repeated after another, then they will not be allowed to drive their UTV in the city. But that way we'll start towing them. And
So they have a license plate like a motorcycle.
Would you fine the machine or fine the driver?
the driver.
So,
And when we write citations, say they're speeding, that goes points in the license like a regular motor vehicle. So they know, you know, they have to follow the stop signs, the red lights, and the speed limits, school zones, etc.
I just wondered if I let my 16-year-old kid drive it in town and then they get picked up, and I let my 17-year-old kid drive it in town and they get picked up. Is that an issue where we play a game here? That's why I asked that question.
Well, the UTV, they would have to be 18 to drive. That would be our ordinance. That's the age. They can't be under 18 and drive them. Some of the chiefs felt that 18 was a very good starting out age for them for the UTVs in the city. They got a couple of years experience driving cars. I think about 95% of them had 18 years of age. So that's what I kind of like about that too.
I see what you're talking about, though. You have the same UTV, the owner of the UTV is allowing underage individuals to operate it. The only people getting in trouble for it are one citation for the 16-year-old, one citation for the 17-year-old, but the owner who's allowing the continuing violations to occur goes under the radar.
There is a IC in that called permitting a violation. If that was the case.
So I'm kind of hearing the kind of stepped up consequence for repeated violations. Is that?
I think it sounds good.
Just
Okay.
say,
I can
maybe
do
just
that.
set it at 50 and 100, and then, I don't know how you're gonna suspend it though, because you can't take their, well, what's the suspension? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? We're
That's what it says.
Sealed bids, we'll get rid of it. It worked out pretty good.
That's why I think, could you suspend the vehicle in the city?
I don't think so, because in the city, I mean, as far as telling them, because if they're driving around, we'll stop them again, and that could be a, you know, I guess I didn't look into that part, but that could be considered like expeditious driving, maybe?
That's what I was wondering, could we take their privileges away for a year from that date? But then what happens if they do it again?
That's the only thing
I mean,
I'm
that's,
saying.
I don't
Like,
know.
we don't have no repercussion for
Right.
strike
Yeah.
three, like,
Are you allowed to have them register with the city and not collect a fee, so you have control
Yeah,
over
can't do
them?
that, because they're paying BMV fees.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you could just do it for free. So
That was challenged, and a lot of cities lost on that, because they can't double dip them.
I didn't charge
And
them.
he's saying without a fee, so that you could pull their their city registration.
So you could, if they would come and you give them a tag.
still can't do anything.
Right, but they still wouldn't have,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, do you just, like, third strike's $5,000? Because then, you know, at
I think-
$5,000, you're not coming again.
I think there was one I said, it was like 1,000.
Was it?
I would need to check, honestly, I would need to check to see if that's would be considered an excessive fine. I understand
I
the
would say 50, 100, and whatever,
maximum amount that we could.
yes.
Okay.
If I don't want somebody coming in the city for $100,
Yeah.
we'll just pay the $100.
we have a building to pay for. Okay, so you're gonna look into that?
Yes.
All right. Well, I just want to say thanks for all the work you've done on this. I know, I'm glad you didn't rush it. You've talked to many, many cities. This is all about the safety of the residents, so thank you for
Yep.
doing all the work you've done for this.
And then, Ann, is that the only question you had on that, or?
Really, I do want to make clear that with regard to the fines, those would be specific to ordinance violations. Whatever kind of violation that an operator would be cited for would carry with it its prescribed fine or fee based on the statute that's being cited. So,
And if you find that, Max, can you bring that ordinance back to the next meeting for approval?
I would plan to have it ready to present for approval at next meeting.
Okay.
Get it completed before summer.
I know weather's,
We're gonna wait. I don't know, I'm gonna wait till November. Is that okay?
I'm getting calls, messages.
I get tons of phone calls too.
Yeah. I think I'd be telling to call you.
Thanks. Thanks.
You don't need business cards, do you?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
All right.
Lenny.
So if you approve it at the next meeting, how long will it be till it goes into effect?
It could potentially be read, the initial reading at next meeting, the second reading at next meeting. Depending on how council wants to proceed, they could elect to suspend the rules and approve it on the third reading. Generally, though, the third reading would be carried over until the first meeting in May then.
Is there a waiting period after that, or is it going to effect immediately?
It could go into effect upon passage.
Okay. Jamie, you want to talk about the website upgrade?
All right, so I have been working with Armanda, updating the website, and she has just asked, we've got approved for the 4,500, you guys approved that for the whole update. So she's asking if we can have half of that down now and then half of it upon completion. So it'll be about 3 or 4 months until it's completed. So it's 2,250 now, and then in a few months, the final 2,250.
And she would have to obviously invoice for that first
Yes,
part, right?
Yep, she would invoice.
Dulles is good with that?
I just needed something, I just said, since you guys approved until the last meeting to pay it once it was completed, that if she wants some kind of payment schedule, you guys need to approve that.
We have a track record with her. I'm fine with paying half when complete. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Motion and second, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay. You're here. Jean's here too. Do you want to talk about the Decatur Sculpture Tour event for him?
Yes, so the Sculpture Tour Committee, they are having the Sculpture Tour on Friday, June 10th, and then Thursday, June 9th is the reception. The event is going to be the same that it's been in the past, other than the reception is typically at Riverside Center on Thursday night for the artists and sponsors, and they are going to have that on Madison Street between 2nd and 3rd Street. And that'll be on Thursday night, and so it'll coincide with the concert series. They'll have everything kind of done before the concert begins so that people can kind of go back and forth. And they have been working with the chamber, I believe, to set everything up. And so they have just asked for different street closings, and I have the application filled out and sent it to Jeremy, signed off on it, and the police and fire station. But what they're asking for is Wednesday, starting at 5 p.m., to close off Madison Street between 2nd and 3rd, just to that alley, so that the tables and tents for Thursday can get set up.
Sure.
And then Friday, it would be the normal schedule of shutting the streets down, starting at 3:30.
So Madison from 2nd to 3rd would stay closed from Wednesday at 5?
Half of it.
Okay, so we're going to leave the alley open?
Yes, the alley would stay open until about 11 o'clock on Friday.
Okay.
So it would just be that front half between 2nd and 3rd.
Okay.
The event's growing. That's good.
Yeah.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve.
And we have the new speakers downtown, so that'll be nice for the
Very
walking
nice.
around down there. That hopefully the new microphones will come in that can run them.
Yes,
So.
it should be in by then.
Good.
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy.
You gonna put speakers on the other end, or that?
We have a quote for it. Right now, they just go down to about right in front of the courthouse. I think we have a quote for going down to Jefferson Street. Okay, I think we have two more agenda items. I'm going to save the ARPA discussion for last. So we have Gene, Charlie, and Jason to talk about ordinances.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. We want to speak to you tonight about kind of why we were here 3 weeks ago about the proposed slaughterhouse at that time. And I'm going to open here, and Gene will have other things to say, and Jason may or may not speak, so we'll see. Okay, start off here. Decatur citizens have spoken, and the Decatur City Council responded very responsibly with a 5-0 vote to keep our law as is. 2 council members last meeting stated that 80% of the responses they got were against the approval for a slaughterhouse in our city. It is obvious where Decatur stands and where we should go from here. Even the attorney from IO stated the obvious. We have a weak law, or ordinance, whatever you want to call it. We agree. And the next step is to adopt an ordinance similar to Adams County's that will state what needs to be. Things like setbacks need to be stated and enforced. Penalties need to cost more money to help encourage things like this to be in the county, as they should be. 3,000-foot distance setbacks are good for all of us. It is possible for there to be a business like this in the area, but not in our city. A slaughterhouse is also known as an intensive livestock operation in our state. Reading the rules from the state on them encourage that the public be included in the planning for these. And our plea is to let us all work together in doing this. We all want to be on the same team. Decatur is a nice place. It's wonderful. And that is due to the fact that the citizens, businesses, others, and the government have worked together for the past many years. When things like this come up, the public must be involved. The public, we know a lot, we're connected, and we want we want to be connected with you on this. And when someone has an idea to better our city, we need to get it into the public arena much ahead of how this IO issue was done. The public saw right through this, so all of us need to be aware of the downsides along with the upsides. Even in all of the statistics that the Adams County Economic Development Council stated, those were only positives. The many negatives were discovered by citizens, and those negatives have to be considered over a longer period of time than the 2 weeks that we knew about it, March 1st to March 15th. And if you remember, there was a recommendation from the Plan Commission on March 1st, and there could have been a vote that night. You guys wisely chose to delay it. That gave us time to do some things, and we thought that was great. Thank you. There are other issues, things like non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, that we are told are common, need to be adjusted to allow for 3 or 4 months of public reveal time. We all need to develop a whistleblower mentality and pay attention to our built-in truth meters. Most of us think of, discuss, and decide by including the negatives too. Same thing that we all do in business. I have to include the negatives in the decisions that I make. And it would help also to have plain, ordinary citizens on some of these committees. We believe that all of us want to keep our city marvelous. I think we all believe that it is marvelous. We believe that the City Council has done a good job to help this. We want the Council to know that the citizens want to be involved and thought of when things like this arise. Please keep this in mind. We felt like we were overlooked in this issue, and the citizens should always be thought of first. And I'll turn it over to Jean.
I had sent an email to each of you on Sunday, March 20th about the Adams County zoning for intensive livestock operations. I have with me the Indiana Land Resource Council Guide for Local Land Use Planning Model Agricultural Zoning Ordinances. He's just passing out the email that I had sent to you. This was created in November 2014. And I want to start out by saying that it says, in recommending these models, any of these models in this several-page document, the council believes, this is a group in Indiana, believes that all stakeholders in Indiana's rural areas are better off with a system that provides certainty about what is and is not allowed than with a system in which land use and the extent of regulation of that use evolves from case-by-case notification. So we as citizens are asking that you please have an ordinance similar to our county or similar to what is being suggested at the very least in this model agricultural zoning ordinance. And they strongly say that this is just a starting point. Depending on your community, and you are very much allowed to make it stronger. I do want to say that the whole thing about slaughterhouse is, it's tough to find in here, but it's under the euphemism of meat processing. And meat processing is the favored phrase, I guess, for this. Here is a table they refer to of official schedule of uses in agriculture. Indeed, meat processing is one of the ones they point out. They have a P for permitted use, S is special exception, X is excluded use. This is permitted use for meat processing only under intensive ag. So that is what it is intensive ag. So I can, send you the link to this if you didn't have it. But I just want to go over briefly that I had sent an email that said below is the Adams County Ordinance 2019-2 that Jason Bruin cited at the 3/15/22 City Council meeting concerning setback distances for intensive livestock operations in Adams County. And the relevant definitions are shown first. This is a short title. It is an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners, County of Adams, State of Indiana, establishing ordinance to regulate intensive livestock operations located in the County of Adams, State of Indiana. Okay, so we have definitions of animal. You can read that. Built-up area. I will say a built-up area means an area of Adams County where 5 or more homes or churches, public buildings, or schools, or a combination of said homes or buildings are located within a radius of 1,000 feet of one another. So indeed, what you're looking at is, for instance, in the, is it Deer Run would be right next to this Dean's building. That's definitely a 5 or more homes. So that's a built-up area. Intensive livestock operation is anything that includes 70 or more animals, but really the state is saying any meat processing is indeed intensive livestock operation, so in the same category. Poultry, like that's included too, that would be 250 poultry. Okay, under 216.4, design criteria for facilities, they cite separation distances and setbacks, the minimum requirements as to a separation distance of the manure storage or total confinement area of intensive livestock must be as follows. Okay. Property line needs to be 100 feet from any property line, the building. The residence, 1,320 feet from any single residence that the operation needs to be. Public education and religious buildings need to be 3,000 feet from any public building, school, or church. 3,000 feet. Also, a built-up area, which is like grouping houses, it needs to be 3,000 feet from any built-up area. And the one I didn't highlight when I sent this to you is I didn't realize, but I do now, see legal drain, 300 feet from a legal drain. And in looking at it, the cone ditch runs right beside the Dean's facility building, right beside it. There's no way there's 300 feet set back there. It'd be appropriate to adopt these limitations on livestock operations into our city code, preferably with greater setback distances and even tighter limitations due to the denser nature of urban versus rural development. We as citizens, area residents, and business owners are counting on you to represent us in our desires to receive at least the same considerations as our county's residents and business owners in separation distances and setbacks. We expect you to consider and trust you will pursue this course of action. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Have a couple comments? Have a couple comments? Well, I have had a chance to read through this county ordinance because it was sent to us. And in the definitions part, it states that intensive livestock operations are defined as, it names a bunch of animals that are produced, raised, or maintained for commercial purposes. That's exactly what the county is. I just want to clarify that. It just says produced, raised, or maintained for commercial purposes. And then it says a combination of 70 or more animals or 250 poultry. That's the definition of the county ordinance.
Are you making the case that, in your opinion, the county ordinance does not cover slaughterhouse stuff?
what I'm making the case is this is for intensive farms, is what their ordinance is.
Well, and that's why, and you know, Gene and I discussed this today, and we were trying to clarify that point. That's why we used the state guidelines as a starting point, that's where the definition of intensive livestock operation came from. And that's where they specifically include any type of meat processing
as intensive livestock operations? Because online it...
That's on this table A. That's on page 14 of that.
But I thought that was intensive ag.
No, that is the zone that it's recommended for, is that they actually have 4 different types of general agriculture, intensive agriculture, rural state, which is intended for like country living, and then forestry. They specifically say that meat processing is not to be, is to be excluded in rural estate or in forestry zones. It's only allowed in general agriculture zones by special exception. In an intensive agriculture zone, it is a permitted use.
But you're citing 2 different documents. You're citing an ordinance and you're citing a different document.
This is
That's not tied to this ordinance.
It's not directly tied, but this is the state official document that explains the foundations of which the county documents were based on.
But I guess what I'm...
Jason, do you mind, may I see that, please?
Yeah, that's fine. And I mean, this is the entire document.
But I guess what I'm asking is, what we were asked through email was to adopt the county language. And the county language specifies animals that are produced, raised, or maintained for commercial purposes.
Well, I guess I would raise the question then. I mean, IO Properties was proposing processing 200 to 250 cattle per day. It is in my opinion that when the language in the county ordinance says consisting of a combination of 7 or more animals, that would of course mean throughout the course of the day that just because they may be killing them, that they have certainly shuttled 250 cattle through that facility within the course of a 24-hour period, that would apply.
Right.
I think it would be difficult for somebody to make the case that that was intended to exclude them just because they all weren't alive on premises at the same time.
Because they weren't livestock? The word that's right there in the front? It basically, there's not 250 of them that are alive at that plant a day. This is a livestock ordinance.
You know what the intention is, Tyler.
I know, but our ordinance stopped it.
To protect and separate residents from somebody
Well-
that...
We have an ordinance already that did that, and then you came in here and just want to shoot down all our ordinances that the process worked. Charlie, you came up here, hang on, just a second. Charlie, you came up here and you said that regular citizens didn't have a chance. They went to the Plan Commission. Those are regular citizens.
We need more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, we need more than 2 weeks. I think that's...
Why are
And
you
what-
getting so upset? I guess
Because we keep getting...
we're human.
Well, so we...
Yeah, but you know what? You said at the last meeting to all of us that we were disrespectful, we were rude to you. Now you're being disrespectful in your attitude.
Did we not just get it disrespectful after we just went through the whole process? It worked correctly. You got what you wanted, and then we get back to the same spot. We're right back to the same spot.
I think some of our concern is that based on comments given by the lawyer for IO Properties at the last meeting, where he specified that in his opinion the ordinance was weak. So in response to that, we would like a stronger ordinance. That's what we're asking for.
And I will clarify, I believe he was saying it was weak because it was only a $100 fine.
Yes.
That's what he was... I clarified that what he was saying was it was weak because it was a $100
Well, and
fine.
that's why, and I can't remember who spoke about it, but one of you mentioned harsher penalties.
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay.
I agree with that. That's what he was referring to, was the $100
And I
fine.
think at the time, I mean, you know, when that prohibition was first enacted, 50 years ago, $100 was more significant fine. I mean, that fine has not been adjusted for inflation, especially today's current inflation. So I think it would be appropriate that the fine be larger to discourage, especially industrial scale animal processing or slaughter. Because I think that's the issue. I mean, I'm sure it has happened that somebody has shot a deer and processed it in their garage and nobody said anything about it. Nobody cares because it doesn't cause a nuisance. What we're concerned about is somebody coming in and doing industrial scale livestock processing. And so I guess if there is that question, for example, like you brought up, Tyler, if okay, when we read the county ordinance, depending on somebody's interpretation, because those uncertain words consisting of a combination of, then our city would actually have an opportunity to make that ordinance crystal clear that at any point in time, if there's in excess of 70 livestock on the premises within a 24-hour period, that would count as an intensive livestock operation. And that would be consistent with the state guidelines that actually mention that any form of meat processing is considered an intensive agricultural operation.
Okay.
Meaning that it would not matter if it's 70 or if it's 7 or whatever. If you are an operation and you are set up for meat processing, you are considered intensive ag by the state of Indiana. And I'll tell you what scares the bejesus out of me is, why are we so upset about this? Your vote went like this. Craig, yes, meaning, yes, let's
Maintain the prohibition.
maintain the prohibition. That, yes, at this time. And you can bring this up any time. You're not protecting any of us when you say that. Tyler, yes. Scott, yes. Wiley, yes. But with further investigation, you're not protecting us. If you expect to be able to entertain this crazy notion, again, we're out here with no protection.
So I guess one of the questions I have,
We need an ordinance.
you're talking meat processing. So the thing that, I guess what I was confused about was the county ordinance is intensive livestock operations, and it specifically defines it as produced, raised, or maintained for commercial purposes, which is a farm. We look it up online, it says the same thing. Produced, raised, or maintained.
Well, I guess produced.
But the other thing, so when you say, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
meat processing. So at Kroger's when they're cutting meat in the back, that's a step in meat processing,
Well,
right?
and that's why I wish that some of the language...
That's where I'm asking for clarification.
So euphemistically, is that I think meat processing has become the euphemistic term for slaughter. I do think there's a distinction. Obviously, there's a difference between taking calves and quarters and turning them into steaks and hamburger versus taking live cows and turning them into dead cows.
Okay.
And
Agreed. That's
I
what
think that's the clarification that needs to be made, because calves and quarters don't make manure. So, that's one of the main things we're concerned about here, proximity to the ditch, proximity to the smell, particularly for the residents of your run, and for the area businesses
Right.
that establish themselves and have been there for 20, 30 years in many cases.
Right.
And that's, I think, this gives us an opportunity to clarify, nobody's against meat processing in general. We all,
They may have pretty strict rules for meat processing.
Yeah.
Setback, distances,
Yeah.
we don't know.
my interpretation was because of the document that phrase meat processing was contained in, was that it was a euphemism for slaughter. I don't think that butchery would necessarily be considered an agricultural operation. And also, I would say, can I see the county ordinance? I think you referenced that it contains the word produce.
Yes, produced, raised, or maintained.
Produce. So I would say that if we think about, making something productionable, like when we produce a boat, we make it fit for the end consumer. We don't ship a live cow to the end consumer. So slaughter is part of the production process. So it would be my position that based on the county ordinance, that slaughter is already included in that definition.
I guess when I look at it, it's talking about farms, and produced is birthing, raised is raising and maintaining. So they're talking about farms. That was my question. Saying that the ordinance doesn't need work, what I'm saying is you're bringing us an ordinance for the county that talks about farms. That's what I'm saying. And we have an ordinance that says, in the city ordinance, no intensive livestock operation shall be permitted in this agriculture or any district. So we have that in our ordinance. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Okay.
We also have
We
a
don't
slaughter
have-
law too.
Well, wait, so we have the ordinance, but I guess, are you just asking for a farm, or you just flat out don't want slaughtering in the city? Is that what
Got it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I guess I want a clarification just to make sure. I did, a couple weeks ago, and I admit I didn't familiarize myself as much with the guidelines. I read through the city guidelines and compared them to the county guidelines. I'm not an expert in that particular ordinance. But is the same definition of intensive livestock operation as far as 70 animals or 250 poultry used in the city ordinance language as well? Well, he's saying that there is a...
Give some numbers. Yeah, give some numbers.
livestock operation. I guess that's what we wanted to make sure was just that, particularly the 3,000-foot setback from the built-up area for any livestock operation was followed. I'd like to have the opportunity to compare those ordinances a little bit more and just look at what the Decatur City Code says more in detail.
Right.
It was my understanding in briefly perusing it that it wasn't as strict as the county ordinances, but based on some of the commentary, it sounds like some of those prohibitions may already be incorporated, so we can certainly check.
I mean, our ordinance, I mean, I went over with Kurt earlier today. Our ordinance says there are no intensive livestock operations. They're not allowed in city limits.
They're only allowed in ag zoned areas. I have one ag zoned area in this city, and that's where the sheriff's department is. And it explains a minor livestock and an intensive. And the very last sentence says,
No.
shall not be permitted in this district or any other district in the city, which means it ain't coming in here, period, until that gets changed.
Great.
Now, the difference is between beef processing and slaughtering. That's what you got to do.
Right, and that's all I was trying to clarify.
I think that's
is the terminology from the counties is about farms, and we're not, we don't need to throw that into our ordinance because it's there. It's absolutely, it's not allowed.
It can be used as a starting point and a firm point of
Right.
discussion.
So I was trying to clarify.
Just like when the other ordinance came up that Tim Ellerding brought up at the last meeting about the sexual ordinance or whatever. He just took that thing and substituted new words into it, and that's a starting point for a conversation. Then we have to, by state mandate, have a law for sexual businesses. We sure as heck need one for cows.
We have to have an area for them.
And I think that's where we need to Kurt a little bit more. A bit more detail. Sure.
Yeah.
We just want to be included in the process.
And we do want to thank all the city council members again for voting particularly with in agreement with the constituency. We appreciate that and being responsive to the constituents. That it was,
if we're going to define food processing, what I was getting at is I don't want to write something and all of a sudden Kroger calls and says we can't cut meat anymore because you guys put it in your law. That's what I want to make sure doesn't happen.
But you'll spend 8 months on this ordinance, probably, writing it and everything, because it took 6 months to do the law. When we finally got down to it, it took many months for the sign
And it needs input from people like at Kroger. It needs input from people like Manley's or whoever.
Right, I agree.
All of that has to be thought about, and we want to be included in that.
Right.
Not necessarily just this committee of people, but
I would hate to hinder businesses we already have that are successful.
right. Nobody's in favor of that, and as touched on earlier, even if there was a large-scale processing of already slaughtered meat into more consumable quantities, I don't think anybody would be. There's not as many problems with that. I'm not saying there's zero problems.
Right.
There's still some animal waste that needs to be taken care of.
Okay.
Byproducts.
So I guess why I have you guys here and I have your attention, can I just ask you a quick question? If these animals would came in completely in a freezer box and they process them all the way through that plant, we wouldn't have any kind of issue with that?
I might. I don't know what kind of smell that might eat it if something isn't done correctly.
We suspect there would be less problem, but we can't say without knowing the details of the operation that there would be no problem. I mean, like I said earlier, is that the biggest advantage is that halves and quarters don't poop.
Okay, I understand that. So, what if a resin plant wanted to come in there? Do we want to give 6 months before any business can take a spot in?
that's for you guys to put a committee together and study that too.
I'd like to add real quick. I think the process worked last time, all right? The planning commission went through, they saw as they saw fit. than the other part of the ordinance, or the other ordinance.
Actually, I'm gonna stop. We keep saying plan commission. I don't think they were ever involved. It was the BZA.
BZA,
Yeah.
my fault, yeah. The process worked, Tyler. You know, BZA did what they did, they make the recommendation, they passed it off to council. But then we also had the 130, I think, or whatever it was, issue. Yeah, and that ordinance worked. You guys listened to the public said you didn't want it, you agreed with it. That ordinance actually, quite honestly, since that point in time, I've done a lot of research, and it's an ordinance that will quite honestly work right now. If it's something that you never touch again, then I think we're protected. A resin plant would have to come in, and it would have to go through the same process, except it wouldn't have to face the 130 thing, of course. So the process works, and I like the way it worked last time. You listened to the public, and we thank you for that. So if that's what was going to go in that place, then it would have to go through that process, and I think it is a process that has proven successful. So to answer your question, whatever scenario you come up with, it has to go through the process. What we're asking for is just, one of the issues that really sort of upset us, I guess, for lack of a better term, is that the only way we really found out that something was happening is somebody interpreted a legal notice in a newspaper. And that was really the only way that it got out to the public. And there was a little bit of concern about that. That's probably what upset this group the most. Is that we had to make assumptions before we could get to
But if it was a resin plant, like he said, it would go through the same process.
Yeah,
it would be a legal ad in the paper. And there's been many of change of use ordinances or special exceptions over and over and over, and they've went through this same process.
Sat through one today that had nobody in the
There
room.
was one today.
Well, and no doubt. But it didn't have to go through the 130 code.
Of behavior prohibition.
Yeah, and the 130 code is what ultimately is what you had to address. You did not have to address the other part of it. The 130 code is what you had to address. So what we're saying is the process worked.
And if it's a resin plant, and that needs to be studied too, let's study that before that's approved. And if they have to wait, they have to wait. And if this place has to wait, find out that whatever, all of that, we're supposed to be able to go to those laws and look at them and say this is permitted and this is not, and that's the reason for laws.
Yeah, I think the rush timeline, particularly,
It was really upsetting to the
that
public.
was the difficult part.
Yes.
I do want to address
Yeah.
that, because with an I-1 or an I-2 zone district, there is absolutely no permissible use outside of a sexually oriented business, because we got to let it land somewhere, okay? So every other business that applies to come into our community must apply for a special exception use. The hardship is they don't have permission to operate unless they get specific approval by our Board of Zoning Appeals to operate their business. When they file an application, the BZA is obligated to hear their application. It's kind of like a litigant in a court of law, a defendant who has a right to a speedy trial. There's a time constraint placed upon the Board of Zoning Appeals to hear that application, to give that applicant a timely opportunity to present their case. The BZA is a quasi-judicial review board. Their sole purpose is to assess and determine whether or not an applicant meets the statutory requirements based on evidence presented at a public hearing to obtain a variance of a set zoning law or ordinance, or to be granted a special exception use under the current zoning code. They need to have the opportunity to be heard. We don't get months to study it. We are obligated, the BZA is obligated to place a notice in a publication of regular circulation a minimum of 10 days in advance of our BZA hearings. Our BZA hearings are generally scheduled on the same day as our city council meetings, on the same days as our Board of Works. So if you want to be aware, we post them in the Decatur Daily Democrat. We can post them in Burn. They're posted. We can make them available online. Look around. If you want to be involved, we are not trying to be anything other than we followed the same exact process that we do for every applicant that comes in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
What's the general timeline, like you said, like the word timely? I mean, is there a definition to that? Like, is there a legal obligation to respond to them within 2 weeks, or is there a certain time frame that, like, when somebody comes to the BZA with an appeal, that is there a legal obligation to reply to them within a specific time frame?
What do you mean with an appeal?
Well, no, when an applicant comes to the BZA, what is the legal obligation time frame to respond to them?
Like I said, it has to be heard within 45 days of the application being received.
And do they have to get an answer within 45 days, or does the BZA reserve the right to table that for further discussion?
The BZA has they have the right to table it for a period of time, but they're limited to the evidence presented at the hearing. So they can't go out and do further investigation or bring in new evidence or wait for other people to come forward. The time to be heard and for evidence to be presented is at the time of hearing.
That's what people don't realize. They're under rules. A BZA member cannot hear that, walk out in the street and talk to anyone else about this and take your opinion of what happened in there. They cannot talk about it outside of here. That's a state statute.
It has to be all presented at the meeting.
It's what happens in that meeting, that's it.
I guess what's unique about this particular situation is that have we ever had a business come before the BZA and ask for permission to run a business based on an activity prohibited by city ordinance? I mean, I'm trying to draw an analogy from what I know about city code, but like, for example, producing synthetic marijuana, which I know the city has specific ordinances against. If a synthetic marijuana producer said, I want to set up shop here, I don't think they would go to the BZA first. I think they would have to come to the city council first and say, we want the ordinance changed first so that we can then apply for Board of Zoning.
There's a chicken and an egg argument, and there's not a wrong way to go about it in that sense. In either situation, both the City Council would need to take action and the Board of Zoning Appeals would need to take action. So,
is the Board of Zoning Appeals allowed to, and that was part of what we were trying to understand, like they almost made a recommendation that 130.02 needed to be dropped, or did they just, or was the recommendation just that that needed to be reviewed by the City Council?
it wasn't just reviewed. So if you're talking specifically about IO properties, in that instance, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved a special exception use subject to several different conditions of approval. The primary condition to approval, meaning their special exception use wasn't fully formed. It wasn't usable. It wasn't an exact item that they could go start their business and run with at that particular moment in time. It was somewhat holographic, and it needed additional substance to make it whole. It never materialized. That special exception use never materialized because this ordinance was not amended.
So had the ordinance been amended, they would have had to have gone back to the BZA with a modified special
That would have materialized that special exception use. Had it been amended to allow their type of business operation or to encompass it because they had gone through the BZA process, then it would have been a formalized and ready-to-use special exception use. But because that condition to approval was not satisfied, there is no special exception use.
Right, because the system
Because the system works.
Conversation that just happened, this is why we need an ordinance against it, an ordinance stating what are the parameters. Because if you see there on about the fourth page of that document we gave you, and it says that you need ordinances so that there aren't wishy-washy areas where you have to go back and forth, where someone applies for something they have hopes that they can actually do. No, we need an ordinance so this silliness can stop.
Well, we can't always.
Well, you should have asked what Indiana State said.
our system works in this process, and I would be happy to talk with you some more, Gene.
What I will say is this conversation right here should have happened ahead of time in a building or somewhere, not on social media and not out in the street.
We agree.
This conversation could have happened,
This should have taken 3 or 4 months to reveal this to
but this conversation never happened with any of these people ahead of time.
Why not?
There was no time.
You guys read through it.
You did.
I didn't even get an
He
email
didn't,
answer.
no one, okay, I'm not going to sit and argue with you. No one rushed anything.
That's not
We went through the process.
I guess my question is, IO Properties came in, and I don't know the whole background and everything, how they came in, but obviously they knew at some point that 130.02 existed. So why did they not come to the city council first? Why did they go to the BZA first? I guess that's the part I'm having difficulty understanding, is that why not seek a change in the behavior ordinance first, before then seeking to run a business based on that prohibited behavior? It just seems like getting the cart before the horse.
Originally, they requested a variant, within their application, originally they requested a variance from 130.02, and it was in filing their application, they realized that that ordinance wasn't part of our land use code. It was part of our
behavior.
It's part of our general offenses section of our code and fell outside the purview of the BZA authority.
Right.
So they removed it, and then they had parallel efforts running for it to be reviewed by both BZA and the city council.
And I hope it's rare that we ever in the future encounter a business that wants to come in ahead of time that their specific business activity would violate an existing city ordinance. I hope that that's rare that we even have to have this discussion.
Agreed.
But I think that that's where much of the controversy came from, is that it felt like, and like I didn't even get involved until after the BZA vote had occurred. I didn't even know what happened. And so I think that it just seemed things got out of order, and I think that's why tempers flared and there were upset people on both sides of the issue. It's just because it felt like the information flow wasn't very great back to the public. And I think that's what we all want here. Everybody in this room wants to work towards a greater Decatur. I mean, that's what we're here for. We want our town to be great. We want everybody to enjoy it, a great place to raise a family, to run a business, everything. But it's just that we have to base what we're doing on true information, timely information, and respect for everybody's just opportunities and wishes. And I just think if there is a similar type of business in the future, I guess that's what we would see, is just that a better process when we follow the procedure that's based on openness. Because it just felt like some of the things were hidden and like, wow, that got rushed. So, yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we only have one last item on the agenda, and you guys are welcome to stay on before, but you can leave now if you want after that. We just have to discuss ARPA funds.